Hey there, Many Constant Worlds is a podcast following the meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King.
I am Taryn, they, them.
And I'm Kat, she, her.
And we are the apotheosis of Dark Tower, meta-disjointed podcast. I told you I was gonna work it in.
You did tell me that, but I don't know that you actually worked it in. You just said it. There's a difference.
I am the apotheosis of working shit in, damn it.
We read the first chapter of The Gunslinger. Before we get too far into that, we also fully support trigger warnings and taking care of our own mental health. So here are the trigger warnings for The Gunslinger as a whole. Not all of these things will necessarily come up in this episode, though I actually think most of them do. But just continuing this book altogether, be aware that major trigger warnings are child death, gun violence, animal death, violence in general, gore, abortion, sexual content, and murder.
I for sure thought you were gonna say gunbortion.
That's a thing too.
It's being pro-choice and, pro-Second Amendment. And living in Nevada, I'm kind of here for it. You know what? I believe in everybody's freedoms. That's not true. I'm actually pretty pro-gun control. Who'd have thunk?
So if any of those things are concerning to you, I definitely don't recommend continuing to read. If you need to tap out, you tap out. That's okay. There are also minor trigger warnings that can be found online. Storygraph is a great place to spot those because other readers are the ones who tag it. And they can come up with things that you didn't necessarily think of. So I just grabbed the major ones listed so we could proceed from there with at least a big warning. Chapter 1 is titled The Gunslinger. And within it, we get stanzas again, so they are also numbered.
I don't think Stephen King knows any other way to write at this point.
To be fair, I have thumbed through books where now we just get regular chapters.
Are they from post, 1985?
I don't know. I would have to, really look at them. I'm not sure.
Okay, drunk cocaine Stephen King doesn't know any other way to write. He's positive that he is the next great epic poet. I was going to say poetess, and then I'm like, no, he is male. He identifies as male. He gets just the regular word.
So we already knew that the man in black fled across the desert, and we also knew that Roland followed. Cool.
That desert is the apotheosis of all deserts.
Originally, that desert was referred to in parsecs, but then suddenly became an eternity. Seriously, the revised version changed the word parsec to eternity on, the first page.
I looked up the definition of apotheosis. That's why I'm so, I'm very proud of myself.
Well, then why don't you tell the people what apotheosis means?
It's the perfect form or example of something, or elevation to divine status. That's the Merriam-Webster version. I always use Webster's dictionary.
Of course, you better.
Fuck Oxford. They can go fuck themselves. I'm not shocked that his first version was parsecs.
Right?
I actually wonder, did he change it to lower the douchebaggery, or did he change it because... So, I actually have a note. I made a note. I made an actual physical note with an actual sticky in an actual physical book. And that note is all capital letters that just says Dune. Because the amount at the beginning of this book is just Dune.
Yeah.
So do you think he changed it because also Star Wars, the amount of copyright infringement, he didn't want to infringe on 2 things. And, three, because also Lord of the Rings just is there all the time.
What, you mean with the Horn of Gondor that they basically reference? No, it's not, but it is.
That's the, I can't even remember now.
It's the Horn of Gondor, now you know.
Yeah, except for he doesn't have it, and it's actually extremely important that he doesn't have it. That ends up being a really serious callback. And I don't remember what the Horn of Gondor is. I know it's a thing. I feel like I remember somebody blowing it.
Yeah, I think Boromir had been the one who was carrying it, and then I
he,
think
like, gives it
yeah
to Aragorn when he's like, "You're my friend, my brother, and my king," or whatever, when he dies. Like, spoilers for
Sean Bean dying.
Yeah,
Is this a character played by Sean Bean sometime ever?
That man's name is Sean Bean or Sean Bean. He doesn't get to have two different pronunciations of the exact same three
This
letters.
man literally gets to die all the time. He gets to have his name be whatever he wants it to be.
You know what? I will give him that pass because of the, like, bar fight or the, like, knife fight he got in. Just protecting somebody. He's pretty great, but I physically cannot. At this point, I've made that joke so many times. My mouth will not physically say, like, Sean Bean anymore without me thinking about it. I just immediately say Sean Bean, and I don't do it on purpose. My brain has just decided that is actually his name. So, for what it's worth, I know that it's not. I don't do it on purpose. But just so everybody knows, that man's name is Sean Bean in my brain, and I can't help it. It's because I made the joke too many times. Either way.
Horn of Gondor.
I can't remember what he, like, I feel bad that I can't remember what his horn's name was. I know that it was the Battle of Jericho Hill. Because it's where Cuthbert falls, and he loses it there.
Give me a moment. I believe that I flagged this section because I even wrote on it Horn of Gondor.
I don't think it's just the Horn of Gilead. I don't think. Which, by the way, teenage me always pronounced as Gilead. And I only learned that it was Gilead. Well, I didn't know how it should be pronounced. In my brain, I was like, the best I got is Gilead. And then out loud, I'm like, I don't know how this word should be, so I won't say it. And I only learned Gilead after, like, The Handmaid's Tale came out. And I'm like, sweet. Someone has ever taught me this word. I'm so happy. And then the Dark Tower movie came out. And I'm like, yes. Gilead. Sick. I have a way to know this word now.
You know, my biggest problem is every time I see it, I think of the Doctor Who planet, and I know that they're not alike, but for some reason that's what my brain wants to do.
Yeah, I don't, it's not called that, is it?
No, it's not. But it's just that, like,
shit, how
vague.
What is his...
Isn't like Gallifrey or something
yes,
like that?
Yes, Gallifrey.
Yeah, I don't...
Jesus Christ.
I don't know why that's where I go.
How dare you make that connection now? Because now I'm not going to be able to not make that connection.
Where? I know I had put on here, Horn of Gondor. Did my thing fall out? It might have fallen out. Oh, here it is. Okay. Does it say what it's called?
It should. I'm positive.
Yeah, it doesn't say in here, but if you want to try your...
fucking kidding?
Like, in my book, it's on page 4.
What does it say?
His hat was gone, so was the horn he had once carried. Gone for years, that horn spilled from the hand of a dying friend, and he missed them both. Shit. Unless the horn comes up again, which, I mean, it very well might, because I could have sworn that I had put on there Horn of Gondor.
The horn absolutely comes up again, but I don't know that it comes up in this book.
Yeah.
I think you're right. But I could swear that the Battle of Jericho Hill comes up again. And I thought it came up here. I know that it comes up again.
And that's why maybe it gets talked about in Tull.
Oh, you know what? Maybe it does get talked about in Tull.
Because I know he was asking somebody about something that happened.
That makes the most sense. It might be when he's being really emo to Brown.
So the entire time he interacts with Brown.
I feel bad because I'm having to flip my pages right next to the mic. I'm very sorry.
Sometimes an ASMR podcast. So yes, parsecs becomes eternity, and that's like within like the first like couple of sentences. They also know who Jesus is, like man Jesus. And it does make me wonder if they have, like, missionaries going door to door in their world, too. Of, like, we'd really like to talk to you about God.
They will find you no matter where you are.
They will. I hope they have the Book of Mormon musical. They deserve that.
I don't know. I don't know if they deserve that. The Book of Mormon musical is pretty great, and after the beginning of this, and how much Roland really disappointed me, I don't think he does.
I didn't say Roland deserved it. I said the people of his world deserve it. We all have bad people in our worlds. So Roland finds a camp that he's pretty sure the man in black had stayed at and saw signs of his humanity. But he can't find any of his shit. And I mean his literal shit, not just his stuff. I'm not swapping those words. And Roland assumes that he's burying it. I'm a little unclear if Roland's assuming that because he thinks the man in black is, like, hiding it, or if it's because, like, a smell thing. Like, you don't want to have your own shit so close to you while you're, like, camping. Which that would make sense. Hiding it, I don't feel like makes as much sense. But maybe that is a naive thought.
I think I have an answer. He's
Okay.
hiding it so that way Roland can't track him.
But he's, like, leaving his fires?
So I think he's leaving the fires so that way Roland can kind of track him, but he's hiding the scat so that way Roland can't, like, he can't figure out how long, like, how far. Because that's the question Roland keeps asking people is, like, how far, how long, like, how far out am I from him? And looking at the fires, he can't really tell. Like, the fire could have been put out, like, a week ago. It could have been put out, like, a month ago, right? Okay. It kind of all looks the same. Mm-hmm. But if you look at poo, like, you can kind of tell, like, is it from a day ago? Or is it, like, fossilized? Plus, it could get used, like, if it's old enough, Roland could use it for fuel. And he could also use it to tell, like, what has the man in black been eating. That he's human. It's also, like,
when you
a source of, like...
When you started this, I really wanted you to finish it with Roland could use it for witchcraft.
Oh, you know what? He actually probably could. I don't know that Roland does that kind of witchcraft, but if the man in black is the same as the antagonist in the Eyes of the Dragon, think about it. He probably actually could. I realize, like, I think you're making a joke, but I have, like...
It's like, not even, like, legit, a joke. Like, it's perfectly fine, but that is how I thought you were going to finish that sentence.
No, like I was more thinking, like, you could burn it like cow dung, like cow patties. Mm-hmm. But if we are thinking about the person that we met in the Eyes of the Dragon, if we think about Flag and how paranoid he was...
Yeah.
He's burying it because he also wants to keep, like, this, like, what I think is he also wants to keep this, like, image up of this, like, guy who's super, like, he doesn't need water, he doesn't need food, he doesn't need whatever. I'm shocked that he even would want to leave the fires, but I think Roland, he builds a fire in that fire pit.
He does, yeah.
And I think that's some of it, too.
Because sharing is caring.
Right? Well, it's also really stupid of Roland because... Which Roland does a lot of really dumb shit all the time. He's not a smart dude. Just as a teenager, I'm like, whoa, Roland's the coolest guy ever, and he knows so much shit. No, Roland's a fucking moron. Just getting through this first part, I'm like, oh my god, you're so dumb. And it's made me have to re-examine everything I knew about him. I'm like, oh my god, he's so stupid. And, like, it's
you can never go back.
No, you can't. Once your eyes are open... It's that whole thing of, like, the first time you and a significant other, like, shit in front of each other. You can't go back. You can't unsee it. I can't unsee this. He's so dumb. It's like a warlock or like a wizard or whatever. Why are you burning anything where they burned something? It's a literal trap. It could be a trap. He could just be Like, think about the dragon sand. All he has to do is hide like a few grains of dragon sand in one of these fire pits, and Roland is a no more. It's so, like, why are you doing this? Build your own fire. You could build a fire pit right next to it. It's not, like, he's not using any of the stuff in it for anything. He's just like, cool, this makes for really neat imagery. Like, why? Maybe I don't know enough about survival, or maybe he's just like, no, like, this is the safest. I don't want to start a forest fire. Like, I don't.
I don't need Smokey coming for me.
Yeah, I don't fucking get it. I don't know. It's a book. It's fine. I don't need to be this upset about it, but it made me really mad.
No, that's fair. And you know what? Let's talk about the fires. I want to talk about the fires because one of the things that, like, is said in this book is, like, there are devils in the flames and not to look into the fires for too long, which, coming off of Misery, is very interesting because that staring at the fire is what makes Annie go blank, and we even saw it in the movie when we watched it.
Yeah.
She just becomes entranced in these fires. And, you know, I guess spoilers coming up if you haven't seen some other Stephen King movies. Very specifically movies, you know, obviously we know the big scene of Carrie is her walking through town having started fires, though she wasn't like pyrokinetic. She was telekinetic and just fucked up some electrical shit, started fires. Dr. Sleep, they end the Overlook with a fire. And even in Misery, it's mentioned that the Overlook burned.
Was there ever, like, a major fire in Stephen King's life? Like, did something burn down in his childhood and he's just like, oh, gee.
And then there's also Firestarter, which I know nothing about, but I'm assuming that's actually probably pyrokinesis kind of stuff, pyrokinesis things happening. The new It movies, at the very least, Mike's parents were killed in a fire. And I think that's also true in the book, but we're not there yet. Don't know for sure. And then...
And in the It movies, you got the kid who walks around making the little, like torch. Yeah, the, like, at-home flamethrower thing. And, like...
And then I just rewatched Secret Window, and there's a house that catches on fire there too. So I think it's like Shines. I'm watching for fires now because there's devils in the fire.
Well, and I do want to say, like, when you mentioned spoilers and movies and stuff, I don't think we can. These movies have been out for like 40 years. I think it's. I don't think we can worry about that. I just don't think. I don't know.
No,
I don't think that's something
fair.
we can.
I literally watched Secret Window in the theaters like 20 fucking years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly 20 years ago, but when it came out in theaters.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, what was the most recent Stephen King movie to come out? It Part 2?
I think that Lissy's Story got turned into a series on Apple.
Yeah, but if it's a series, I'm talking about movie, like a legit theatrical release movie.
It might be, yeah.
Because Dr. Sleep, I think, came out before.
It definitely did.
I'm not, well...
I think Chapter 2 is probably the newest Stephen King movie.
Yeah, probably. Because I think Dr. Sleep was... Because Dr. Sleep came out before the pandemic. And It Part 2, I think, came out during it. Yeah. So, yeah, I just can't, like... I think that has to get looped into the spoiler alert, because I can't keep it all straight in my brain, and I apologize. I just can't. My brain can't do it.
Well, and our entire thesis of this podcast is that it's all connected. Yeah. And you can't talk about one thing without talking about 20 other things.
No, it's true.
It's just going to naturally happen, I think, because it helps keep some sort of context to what's coming up.
Pretty much the rule of thumb is, if we haven't got to it during the podcast, like, we haven't done it officially, just forgive us for not knowing what we're talking about, possibly, because we might not remember it right. I certainly probably don't remember it right. And if we have got to it officially, I probably still don't remember it right.
Yeah. We're doing our best.
Everybody's here to have fun.
Pretty much, yeah. We're having a nice time. We're reading books. We're causing chaos in our own brain.
Quite frankly, if fun for you is also trolling, as long as you're having a good time, I don't think I care. I literally saw a TikTok today that was somebody, they put a comment on the screen that was literally them getting a comment that said, like, I'm begging you, please, please block me. I can't, like, I'm so sick of seeing your videos. Please block me. And they were laughing and saying, like, well, first of all, like, you're doing this to yourself. Like, you're following me and showing that they have, like, a button that says, like, follow back. They're like, you do it to yourself by following me. And they're like, but it's so funny whenever I get these comments from you. Like, these are legitimately the funniest comments I get. I might actually follow you back. I am not letting you go. I'm not doing this. I don't know that we've seen any like, meanness or negativity, but I will say, like, that is the feel with which I approach any of it.
So yeah, Roland meets up with a guy named Brown.
A guy named Brown who has super red hair, and I have issues with this. At least I think that's the guy that keeps getting described as, like, having fluffy strawberry blonde hair
I
or
believe
whatever, right?
so, yeah.
Why the fuck? Stephen King, why? Why would you do this to me? Why not name him, like, Red? Make it make sense for my brain. If you name him Brown, my head is gonna be like, cool, brown hair. If you name him Brown and then give him red hair, my head, I mean, I guess
we just split the red from the brown so it wouldn't be black anymore.
I mean, I guess I did an okay job, because I'm talking about it, I'm thinking about it, I remember him. But wait, what do you mean it wouldn't be black anymore?
Because if there's a possibility he's a trap set by the Man in Black, he's got red hair and his name is Brown.
Oh, I thought maybe you meant he had black hair, like, in the revision.
No.
Stephen King was like, I can't have two, like, if he has black hair, people are gonna think.
Yeah, no. I would just being a smart ass.
No, your version...
Playing around with some color theory.
Your version made a lot more sense.
So Brown has a scrawny raven. I don't know why it's important that the raven is scrawny, but yeah, he has a scrawny raven named Zoltan.
So to me, I never thought that Brown was the Man in Black, but I did think Zoltan was.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I think that's why it was important to me, the distinction that it's a raven, because it's black. Mm-hmm. It's black, it talks in complete sentences the way that it does. And the Man in Black says weird shit. The whole, like, beans, the musical fruit.
Yeah.
That kind of nonsensical, like, weird shit. Because I'm listening to the audiobook as I do, I am also using a physical book because I'm getting serious. But listening to the audiobook, it didn't stop when I'd finished the section that we're doing. So it had actually gone over. And into the next section, there's like another like nursery rhyme kind of thing that happens. Mm-hmm. It's not that one. When the Man in Black comes up again, it's another like nursery rhyme kind of like that. So I think keeping an eye on that whole like kind of weird nursery rhyme bit is important. The Monty or the Manny get mentioned once before earlier in the book when it's talking about him knowing Jesus. They're the follower. They're the ones who follow him.
Yeah.
So the fact that Brown knew them or used to tool around with them, doesn't anymore, feels interesting. And part of why it feels interesting is what just occurred to me is that whole tirade I just went off on, the fact that it keeps getting pointed out that he has red hair and he has a black raven crony. It makes me wonder if Brown is actually the Crimson King. Because he's a redhead who's just out in the desert doing whatever right after Roland does all that in Tull, and he won't give Roland what he wants. He won't actually like ask, but he does want to know what happened in Tull.
Yeah.
The whole interaction is weird. He would need to know what had happened in Tull. And again, he has this, like, scrawny raven crony, which is, you know, the man in black is a scrawny fucking wizard. And the raven is named Zoltan. So basically Brown, which is such a weird name, just in general, I can't stand it. And it's like the last, like, he doesn't give Roland any straight answers or anything. Yeah, it would just be interesting. And the fact that he tooled around with the Jesus people and then left, and you can kind of tell that at first the Crimson King is kind of meant to be Satan. Like, that's how he comes across. I think the unrevised version of the book, that's more clear. He obviously moves away from that because he doesn't need that anymore. And I think the man in black is meant to be like death. And you have this gunslinger who's chasing death, trying to catch, but you can't catch death. At least that's my theory.
All I can think of now is a Dark Pictures game. It's like the Gunslinger.
Right? And so he has a falling out with Manny. I think part of the reason that I think that is that Manny kind of sounds like manna, so manna in the desert, but it also sounds like Emmanuel and shit like that, so it just sounds like things that you might call like angels and shit. And then, but he doesn't, like, he eventually breaks off from them. Like, I don't know. And does he also have, like, a goat or something?
No, he does not. I don't think it's, like, mentioned, like, in the initial description of him.
I could have swore he had, like, a goat, and then there was something happened with Roland. He's like,
Roland has a mule that dies.
Oh, that's okay.
And Brown is telling him, like, your mule and is fucked up, and Zoltan needs the eyes.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And then Zoltan fucking eats the eyes out of the mule, which is so weird.
Well, on the subject of the Manny and Brown's, like, departure from them, he mentions that a part of the reason, like, he backed away was because they were always looking for holes in the world. Which is exactly what we're doing. I want to know what the Manny are up to. Where's my Manny side story? Manny, Monty. I don't know how it's supposed to be said. We also get another notable difference between the revised and the unrevised here, where Brown is asking Roland if the man in black is a sorcerer. And in the unrevised version, Roland's answer is just a straight yes. Whereas in the revised version, it's among other things. I don't know that it's like he lost any kind of certainty there, because he's still not saying that the man in black is now a sorcerer, but it's almost like he understands that he's a lot of shit. So towards the end of this stanza, the big thing that stood out to me was we're back to that damn bird, Zoltan. He starts making the noise talk, 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 or tack, tack. I'm not sure exactly how it's supposed to be done. And that made me think of Desperation so bad, because I just remember the thing in that. It just made weird noises like that too, and I believe that's one of them.
Yeah.
And I checked the unrevised version. It's the same. It's the same in both places. Just something that got my attention, and I'm watching for it, sort of like that dude's story, Kieran. I'm waiting for Kieran's, like, time. I was promised a story of a man named Kieran, and I am not giving up on that. And now I'm also, like, on the lookout for various shines and fires. We do find out that Roland is from somewhere called In-World. As in I-in. I'm a little bit confused on the geography, honestly, like how it's occupying, because it mentions, like, Midworld is described as somewhere further away, but they make it sound like it's literally, like, linearly further away, so I'm not quite sure how it all connects just yet. I'm assuming you're going to have an answer for me, or tell me I have to fucking wait.
So I might actually even have better.
Okay.
I believe I have a map. Okay, so I have Robin Firth's The Dark Tower, a concordance. It covers 1 through 4 in The Dark Tower, because I have volume 1. In the appendices, there is a map for the original Gunslinger, a map for the revised Gunslinger, and then a map for some things that we haven't got to yet. But these first two maps will at least show you what we're looking at right now. It doesn't look like they're showing in-world versus mid-world. But the idea is it's just kind of, because I have seen this in a map before. So you remember like where like Delane was?
Mm-hmm.
I think Delane was considered like in-world. It was essentially where shit was still like quote unquote civilized.
Okay.
And then as you go further out, you get to like mid-world where stuff is almost like falling apart.
Okay.
It's this more outer area. You could also think of it like, or at least in my mind, this is how I've always seen it, kind of like in Star Wars where you have like the core planets. That's like in-world. And then as you move out, you have like the middle areas where the planets are more like, they're kind of a part of the Republic and eventually the Empire, but they're a little less governed. And then when you get even further out from that, you have like Tatooine and you have like the edge planets. We haven't got to those books yet where they start talking about those places where shit is just fucking wild. It's called End World. And we haven't even made it there. But Roland is from In-World, which is just more. It's actually more like I really don't. The anthropologist in me hates using the term civilized. It's not
settled,
right.
Maybe.
Yeah, settled
like
is probably
just
good
settled there.
Word. And in reality, civilized in this way is probably the right term. But it's because this dimension is like falling apart. Okay. So when I use the term civilized, it's because it's literally going like. We're talking like the professor, like to shreds, you say. Like everything is dissolving.
Yeah.
In-world is more held together. And eventually I'll find a map. There might be a map in the third or fourth book. There's a map somewhere, but this page, this is the original Gunslinger map. And then this is the revised Gunslinger map, and it'll show you, there's some spoilers on it, but it'll at least show you like where we're at right now. Pricetown is where he got the mule, and then Tull is where all the shit happened, and you can get an idea like...
Brown's hut. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That does help.
And now we can kind of follow as we're moving through the book, so that way you have more of a...
Yeah.
I didn't need that because I can't do spatial awareness anyways, and it means nothing to me. So
you've heard us mention it a couple of times. Roland came from a place called Tull before he ran into Brown and kept being like real like, I want you to ask me about what happened, but like the right way. Because Brown keeps asking him like, do you want to talk about it? Which Roland keeps saying no to. But then he, like, just will not stop kind of, like, looping back around.
Don't you want to know? Do you want to ask me about it?
Yeah.
I can see why my teenage self loved Roland, because he's the emoist piece of shit about this. Like, well, don't you want, like, I know you want to ask me about it. She's like, well, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
I honestly, though, I could have gone with a whole book of them just going back and forth and eating corn and, like, different ways of, like, well, do you want to know about, do you want to ask? Well, do you want to talk about it? Like, if Stephen King had filled an entire book of them just doing that dance in different ways, that would have been fucking hilarious.
Roland does eventually break and start talking about it, dives into the whole...
Does he break, or does Brown finally ask?
I don't think he point blank asks. He kind of keeps going like, do you want to talk about it? And I think just something about it, finally, Roland just sort of started talking. But before we go too far into that, because that's going to pretty much be like the shift here. The bird, we briefly mentioned, he ate the mule's eyes when the mule dies.
That's
Brown,
the tasty bits.
Brown is going to keep the mule and consume the rest of it when Roland leaves him later.
So, new theory, Zoltan is really just Henry Zabrowski from last podcast on the left, and your pretty face is going to hell. And my, everything that I want to be in life is Henry Zabrowski, but I digress.
And Roland does ask Brown if he ever thought of eating the bird, to which Brown responded that, and this is not in the unrevised at all, like, this is an entirely added bit to the revision. Brown says that talking animals aren't good eating, and he actually references the Billy Bumblers that Taryn has mentioned.
Shout out to Oi. Oi is literally the best character in the entire series, and I'll fight. Like, I will throw hands, I don't give a shit. Like, fight me.
And now we are going to dive into Roland's memories.
This may be the first time, it won't be the last.
We are going to go in to his past and his perception of what happened in Tull. There's a woman, a zombie, a religious zealot, and a piano player.
How reliable do you think Roland's memory is? I feel like, because I'm going to tell you now, this is going to happen a lot. We're going to do a lot of... So one of the books, the newest Dark Tower book, The Wind Through the Keyhole or whatever, I'm almost positive is him having a memory and then telling a story in that memory. Like, we do this a lot.
Well, to answer your question, I have to say that I'm not sure, partially because I am reading this, let's say, the 80s to the 2020s. 40 years later, I'm reading this significantly past when it was originally put together. I think it's a lot like when I was reading Misery, reading it with today's eyes.
Yeah.
It's a very different book. I would say reading it with my today eyes.
With your special eyes.
Zoltan can't have them.
But can 1-800-CONTACTS fill them?
I mean, possibly.
Not #not spawn.
I want to say I don't trust Roland's recollection of anything because I feel like the way that he kind of talks about some of the people in Tull,
yeah,
it seems very like I am the center of everybody's interactions. The people in Tull didn't exist until Roland rolled into town, almost. And the way he talks about their behavior, he doesn't seem to observe that they're doing anything. He only observes them when they are doing something related to him. Looking at him, talking to him, walking towards him. Otherwise, he's got, like, blinders. And frankly, I don't necessarily trust his perception of things because it seems a little bit like when you are that unaware of everything else going on around you,
yeah,
you cannot possibly interpret every single thing right. Does this person come up yelling and screaming at you because of whatever thing you've decided, like, oh, they just out of nowhere started yelling and screaming at me, but it's because you didn't observe the fact that you just knocked over something of theirs when you walked past.
Yeah.
Because it didn't matter to you that you had knocked over something or ruined something. So I don't know that I trust Roland's memories. I think that there's some shred of truth in there. But
yeah,
I'm not, given how much the dude kept going like, no, I don't want to talk about it. But do you want to know about it? I feel like there's something sketchy here.
That's so interesting. I've never considered the question before. It's never, like, before the moment I asked it, I had never considered it. And for some reason I just went, oh, but and I think it's because of Misery that I thought about it, because Paul. I think it was Paul. He was in. So when we watched the movie, because we have done that. I have seen Misery. I didn't read the book, but I saw it. When we watched it, it was so different from the book, without being all that much different, but the way that Paul is portrayed, he's so much, because he is more reliable, and I think it's because you can see it, and you can see that the things that he's recounting are what's happening because you're watching Annie do things.
Yeah.
But in the book, the way that it sounded from you anyways, there was this chance of like an unreliable narrator, right?
Yeah.
And then reading this again and kind of having that, like, you're not watching this shit. Like, you're not even having it narrated to you. You're not there in Tull with Roland. You're hearing the story after.
Yeah.
And the way that you just put that is so spot on and interesting. And it's interesting for the rest of the series. This idea that it's only, like, they didn't exist before Roland walked in. And they only existed to interact with Roland. And that's a book. That's a story. That's how it is anyways. Like, these characters only exist to interact with Roland, and then they stop when he no longer needs them. But within the world of the story, that's not like, if you're Brown listening to Roland's story, that's not like if you and I are having that conversation in the real world, that's alarming, because those are people.
Yes.
And Roland, this is a big, I would say that this is Tull is the biggest foreshadow event, I guess, of Roland and the entire rest of the story, because he may be the main character and the protagonist, but he's not a good dude. Everything with Roland, it's not even really about getting to the Man in Black. Everything is about getting to the Dark Tower. There is nothing, he sees nothing else. He breathes nothing else. People do not exist to him unless they are in furtherance of his journey. Nothing matters. Nothing happens. Once he walks into a town, people start because he needs them to start. And once he walks out, they don't matter, and he doesn't really look back. And that is just how he functions. And I think that because, the people within the world are looking at this guy and going, well, you are a gunslinger. You're one of the good guys. You're here. Our world is falling apart. You're here to put it back together and to be a good guy. And he does things to help at times, and he does things that are helpful and that are on the side of good and everything, but only because those things take him further on his journey. Because he'll also do things that are neutral or are bad, because they're just things that take him further. I think to see him as a hero is a mistake. And it's certainly a mistake that I made as a teenager, because he's a nuanced character. I think that there are people around him that maybe you could see as heroes, but even then,
I think that's just the crux of a Stephen King character, because legitimately, so far, everything we've read, no one, I would say, is a good guy. In the traditional sense of a storytelling thing, oh, that's the hero, that's the good guy. They're all pretty flawed, because even Peter, who is arguably probably the stereotypical build for the good guy, he is a prince, he is smart, he is handsome, he is all of the things, but he's actually not that smart. Not as smart as you're kind of led to believe at times he does do some very foolish things. He makes mistakes. He's very human. And Thomas, who, like the narrator kept telling us, he's not a bad boy.
Yeah.
Which is the other side of this, of even the bad people. Like, reading Misery, I feel very bad for Annie.
Yeah.
Watching Misery, I feel very bad for Annie. Annie was let down by a system.
Yeah.
But Annie is not just a bad person. And I do think that's something great that we started with The Eyes of the Dragon. Because it makes it very clear.
Yeah.
You know, Thomas is not a bad boy.
He's a sad boy, but he's not a bad boy.
No.
Peter's goodness actually gets him in trouble. It gets him hurt. It gets him locked away for many years. And it's not until he starts thinking in a manipulative and he has to think, he has to figure out how to escape prison. He has to beat up the prison guard. He has to do bad things in the name of good.
Yes.
To get out. I think the way that you put it is just so on the money. This idea that we're only seeing it through the way that he sees it, and the fact that he's only seeing it there's a lack of empathy or a lack of sympathy. He doesn't, I always get the two mixed up, empathy and sympathy, but there's
just a lack of awareness altogether.
Yeah. Sometimes. It doesn't matter. All that matters is what he's there for and what he's doing. He just doesn't care. And I think, and I'm sure that we're going to get to it, but the way that he ends up using the woman that he stays with.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, he uses her.
Oh, yeah. And that's a lot of what led me to this, the way he talks about, especially the women. It's very misogynistic.
Yeah.
I see you, Stephen King, in the past.
I may have missed it. It didn't feel as bad as other things have been.
Yeah, no, it's not the worst, but it is a little and this is technically how things were, and I accept that history sucks. What really sealed it in for me with the way he talks about other people and specifically women, and kind of how he uses Allie, is when he goes to talk to the farmhand or whatever, Kennerly, I think was his name.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the dude's daughter.
Ugh.
And she's the way that entire moment is described, where she's peeking out at him, where it feels like it's meant to be oh, she was lusting after me. When a teenage boy would recount oh yeah, that girl was totally into me. And then you even get her father turning around and calling her a slut or something and telling her to get inside. And it's this is such a weird moment that honestly, I didn't need this scene.
Yeah.
This does not help your story, but it does for a guy who, maybe wants to brag a little bit about oh yeah, no, they all wanted me. I was sleeping with her, but then this guy's daughter she was peeping out at me. I even have a little sketch I made of a person peeping out of the corner, because I'm this is such a weird scene.
You're right. I didn't catch it. That it didn't come across that way to me. And you're absolutely right. I didn't catch it that way because it was just also off-putting and so weird and gross. Because I will say, I have always skimmed Tull.
Yeah.
It's really boring.
I was literally dreading having to read Tull. That was probably the part that took me the longest. I read all the way up to when he starts getting into it. And I'm ugh, I don't want to read Tull.
I think it was not only boring, but it makes, it's gross. It's
gross,
weird. Yeah. I haven't read Desperation. Isn't Desperation also a movie? Or am I thinking
it's a miniseries with Ron Perlman.
Yeah, I haven't seen it or read it, and I wonder if it's got those same kind of feels, but it's so Tull is so off-putting.
Yeah.
That I wonder if that's some of it too, that I'm just I don't want this.
The man in black had been to Tull, and he left the woman with the zombie with a loaded figurative gun by way of the magical word 19. A word, mind you, that Paul Sheldon could not have typed on his Ducky Daddles typewriter. It would have just been I. Just something to think about there.
That's interesting, actually, because
yeah.
I could not put in my brain, like, why these specific letters that dropped out of this. But considering 19 is what it triggers Nort to tell her the secrets of, like, death.
Yeah.
And Paul almost dies, doesn't he?
He does. I mean,
know in the movie he almost dies.
She was prepared to kill him when he finished the book. The goal was that they were going to die. She was going to murder suicide there.
I meant in the
accident?
Yeah, in the accident. But what I'm also thinking is the typewriter, if it's not so much a direct, like, connection to someone who is still alive, but if it's possessed by a ghost of Ducky Daddles, it's someone who is dead, right? And if you've only got I am here, and that's all that's left, it's like the letters are falling up. Like, I don't know.
No,
it would make more sense for, like, the numbers to be going, I guess, in that case. But
no, and I just think it's something worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Paul Sheldon could not write the word 19. He did not have N's, he did not have E's, and he did not have T's. The only letter of that word that he could maintain is the letter I.
I really want to, because Ducky Daddles, the way that Ducky Daddles acts, and the name being kind of funny, and then the way that it sounds like he acts, I may need to read some of the passages. He makes me think of Cuthbert so much. Cuthbert was Roland's best friend, and he was kind of a goofball. He is the friend that when Roland says, like, he lost a friend at Jericho Hill when he lost the horn and he's really tore up about it, that is Cuthbert. Cuthbert is fucking amazing. When I was a teenager, being a shitty teenager, well, not shitty, but we all did it, and we would make, like, usernames and shit.
You mean asking people if they want to hear this thing we really want to talk about, and going, no, I don't want to talk about it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I'm actually talking, you'd make your usernames and shit. So Cuthbert is Cuthbert Allgood. I would make, because I was like 14, I would make usernames like, because I'm AFAB, I would make usernames like Mistress Allgood and shit like that, because I was so into Cuthbert Allgood. Like, how we all did it. We were all 13 and 14 once. I mean, I guess I must have been older, because I'm pretty sure I didn't read it till I was 15, so I guess I'm telling on myself a little bit, but we were all also 15 and 16 once. Come on. But
we were all teenagers.
I would never do that now as a 35-year-old. Well, the things that kind of jumped out to me as still being very, like, it's just off-putting, and I don't know why I didn't immediately kind of see it as kind of misogynistic or I don't know why. It just, again, I think it was just so gross that I didn't kind of see it that way. There was one line with Allie, and it was, because it was talking about the scar on her face. Mm-hmm. And when she's talking to Roland, and it says that she, like, covers her face, and he was glad for it because it, like, gave her maidenhood back for a single moment. And I'm like, are you fucking serious right now? What the fuck? And then, because I could not stand that line. And then, there was another one, I think it was actually before that, where it was talking about it may have been Kennerly, I don't know, one of the farmers or somebody riding into town with his daughter with his arm around her, like cupping one of her breasts.
It was Kennerly. And I think it was the one that he accused of being, like, a slut.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like, it
also made me think of Bev's dad in it.
Oh, God, yes.
It made me, yeah, because I don't even know that that's, like, a direct thing, and not just that Stephen King thinks if your dad is being very inappropriate with you, he's also going to call you a slut. If you show interest in anybody else.
Yeah.
I don't think he is incorrect about that. It's just really uncomfortable, and I don't know why he has to keep doing it. Like, it doesn't have to be rehashed every single time he writes books. It's gross. But maybe it does. Maybe he has a good reason for it. I don't know. But yeah, it did make me think of Bev's dad in the It movies. Haven't read the It book. The movies are pretty good.
We love us some It movies in this house somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fantastic.
They are.
I stand Bill Hader. Stefan is the greatest. I'm having to try to do brain bleach for a second because Bev and her dad are like,
yeah,
great actors. Great
oh my
acting.
God, yeah.
But
oh my gosh, I don't know who did younger Bev. I don't know her name, but
she was great in the Dungeons and Dragons movie
she
too.
plays Dork in Dungeons and Dragons, and she's just such a good actress.
I do wish that they'd gone with like a color for a tiefling and not just like human colored.
I do too. Come on.
But I do have to say, it was probably a smart move makeup wise because she didn't have to, you can tell I don't I'm like, let's move on from Bev.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because think about the X-Men movies.
Mystique.
And Rebecca Romaine having to put on hours of makeup.
It's the same as the Zoe Saldana having to do Gamora.
Or Jim Carrey. Now Jim Carrey had to also put on fur and shit for the Grinch, but he said he had to learn CIA anti-torture techniques to deal with it all the time.
Fair.
So honestly, good. I'm happy for young Bev. She was really good in it, and not having to learn how to deal with torture.
Yeah, no, I agree. And she's that is a movie worth watching.
That movie was adorable. It was very good.
It was great. She is just such a good actress.
I knew it was gonna be good. I did not expect it to be that good.
Right.
I was worried because I went in with expectations and then it exceeded them. And now all I can think about is that Vine or TikTok or whatever that's ask me what kind of tree I have. Ask me what kind of tree I have. Oh, what kind of tree do you have? It's Chris Pine. It's all I can think of. Chris Pine. It's Chris Pine.
Anywho, if the word 19 is said to Nort the zombie, then Allie will learn about death, as we have mentioned. The Man in Black left this note to Allie, explaining all of this to her. And this is where we get his sign-off name of Walter O'Dim. Of course, we do remember that Flag liked to use his dim skill, so I'm sure that's not a coincidence. Doesn't really feel like a world where coincidences just happen.
That is such a good catch on your part. That whole that he liked to be dim and then went... Because I had looked on a wiki or something that was arguing about whether or not Walter O'Dim was Flag or just someone who worked for Flag, and that's such a good catch. Ugh.
Yeah, I really mean it. This does not feel like a world of coincidences.
No, you get all the points today.
Roland does hang around Tull for a little bit, knowing full well that there is a trap for him here, but he's not really sure what it is. He ends up hearing about a religious woman, and he makes his way out to see Sylvia Pittston. And she proclaims that Roland is the interloper. And you know what, Taryn, you've said it best. What does Roland do?
He does a gun abortion.
That's right. That happened.
I have issues with this because obviously he does this gun abortion. He does all of it, without consent.
Yes.
And against her will.
Yep.
But is that acceptable when one has a demon baby?
I guess that's the real question.
And was it so? Was she? Because I feel like there were other ways Like, he could have just killed her.
Yeah.
Like, this whole scene feels like it didn't need to happen
I can agree.
like this. And I realize saying, well, he could have just killed her is probably kind of callous. Like, he tried to leave her alive. But that feels worse. Like, and didn't he, like, say, like, wasn't he constantly, like, telling her all the time, like, there's no baby or something? Like, I don't.
I think he was saying something like that she was carrying a demon. You're carrying a demon. It's not a baby. Because what she ends up, like, telling him is that the man in black left her with a child, but not his, but the child of, like, a great king. And that's why Roland's just like, it's not a baby, it's a demon or something of that nature. And that's kind of where it was going. I don't think he necessarily denied the fact that she was impregnated with something. He just disagreed with what she was impregnated with.
I have to look, because that's...
Yeah, it's kind of sort of just plain weird. Like, that entire scene was just very weird. I think I ended up, like, having to even reread it, even by the end of the second time. I'm just like, this is just a weird scene. But it does kind of showcase how feral Roland is. Because he just does it. And he does not really hesitate about it. He is convinced that he's right, and so he does the thing. Taryn is making a face.
Yeah, I found it. Apologies. I found it.
I just felt like you know that you were making a face.
Yeah, it's another scene that just feels really disturbing. And I don't know. I felt different when I was younger. I don't know that I feel like being impregnated with a demon baby makes this okay. And I think it's another thing that just makes this whole thing feel real gross. Like,
yeah,
there's just so many other ways to deal with it. Like, because she says no so much.
Yeah.
They don't have a safe word. Like, so no means no.
And remember, this is Roland recounting all of this, too.
Yeah.
This is how he says it went down.
Well, and here's the other thing. This was what I was looking for. He doesn't really care about the kid.
No.
About the demon. He wants information from her. Because he says, like, I'll catch him. We both know it. What's beyond the desert? And when she won't tell him, he says, the demon, then out it comes. He'd have left it if he had gotten the information that he wanted. And then she tells him, but she basically tells him too late. She does say it's the child of the Crimson King. And I think this is the first time we've heard the words Crimson King.
It is. And this is actually a change from the unrevised. The unrevised version does not name the Crimson King.
And this is where I thought it came, because she says, you've killed the child of the Crimson King, and he stopped at the door and looked back. No child, no angel, prince, no demon. And I think that's what made me think, for some reason, that there hadn't been a baby at all. Mm-hmm. But I think he might just be rubbing it in that he'd done it. But he gets the information, like, he doesn't care. It's not,
no.
It's literally just a torture scene. It's just to torture the information that he wants out of this woman. It's really disturbing. And I don't understand why in the 2003 version that wasn't revised.
Well, I mean, it was revised to include the name drop of the Crimson King. Priorities, Taryn, come on.
Jeez. And I just don't. It could have been cut. There could have been another, like, it's just kind of gross.
It is. It's really, it's just a weird scene, like, all the way around. But I will tangent us into, go ahead.
Well, just before, I want to wrap up what we see in Toll when it comes to Roland and women, because that's important. Roland has what we have already seen and what we will continue to see, and I think that we should keep Thumbtack in just as far as Roland as a person. He uses women and sexuality as a means to his end. Really specifically, Eddie will have a nickname for him, and this is spoilers, but I think right here it's important. He calls him, I think it's like long, dark, and ugly, or like tall, dark, and ugly, or something. Mm-hmm. But as we've seen, as gets pointed out pretty clearly here, he's not meant to be ugly. Stephen King makes it so you're kind of aware that women tend to want Roland, and Roland tends to use that.
Yes.
Sometimes if I remember right, sometimes he almost seems unaware, and that feels like it happens more later. Sometimes he's very aware and just doesn't give a shit because of what he does mention at one point in Tull, which is the woman, the girl Susan that he left in the Megis.
Yeah, I was not sure how to pronounce that word.
The dude doing the audiobook, I think, said it like Megis, but I always said it Megis, so I don't know. I'm sure the person doing the audiobook is more right than me.
I would assume so.
But it's going to come up again in this book. It's going to come up again often. And it just feels like an important character point to make note of.
Yeah.
He uses it violently with Sylvia Pitson. He uses it manipulatively with Allie. He even used it with Kennerly's daughter. It feels like just standing there being a person. He does this all the time, in the same way as with Paul, that it was like he kind of used that with Annie. He definitely did in the movie.
Yes.
And it seemed like in the book he would kind of manipulate her that way.
Yeah.
Roland absolutely does that. And I think just like it's yet another thing. Like he will use every single thing at his disposal to get to his ends. And that is just yet another one of his means.
I'm going to get into like why I was really looking forward to recording today. Because I had intense Charlie Day meme energy. We have another religious woman and a connection to at least the idea of a baby. Regardless of what. Did she have a baby? Was that baby a demon? That's all besides the point. Especially because, again, by her own words, she says that the man in black is the one that put a baby inside of her. It just wasn't his. Oh my gosh, this just sent me down such a rabbit hole because, first of all, we've already seen religious women. So we have Annie. She does kind of talk about, like, appropriateness and God. And, like, even in the movie, we do see that she's wearing a cross most of the time. Like, she is of some kind of faith. Well, she never had a child that we know of. Like, there's no mention within Misery that she ever even was pregnant. She did kill infants. And a lot of them. And she believed that she was sending them to someplace better. She was convinced that she was essentially freeing them from whatever hell they were going to experience here. And then we also have Carrie's mother, which we haven't read Carrie yet, but we've watched the movies. And Carrie came out in the 70s. We know what happens in Carrie. Enough. We know that Carrie's mother was super religious. And she also had a child thrust upon her because she like believed even intimacy amongst married people was a sin. Yeah, no, it's wild. Like, why are you getting, I don't understand what the point of marriage is in that situation. Why, like, and obviously things were not okay with Carrie's mother.
Yeah.
And maybe becoming a nun was like not an option for her.
Yeah.
But I don't quite understand like how we get to that point of that even like married people should not be having like intercourse for even the sake of like creating a child.
Yeah.
At that point it's like, why would we even get married? Why not just like be done with it all? That's too fundamentalist for me, I guess.
So I have, with Carrie's mom, I think the whole marriage thing had more to do with the times, because back then there were so many things that women couldn't do without a husband. Like, I don't know if that was before women, like, could easily have bank accounts and credit cards and things. Like, if that shit was more, like, if generally it was easier to have those things in your husband's name and stuff. And so if it was more like, well, you get married because that's just what you do.
Yeah.
And because it's easier socially and shit like that. In Misery, it says that he had consulted with mental health experts, and hyper-religiosity is a big symptom of some severe mental illnesses. So, and people know, like, I haven't consulted with mental health experts. I just have mental illnesses. If he had just read about or just knew that going into things like Carrie, I think I have some ideas of where your theory is headed. And knowing where your theory is headed, I think that there could be some idea that the people being targeted are people who are mentally unwell, and some of that mental unwellness comes out as hyper-religiosity. And that's why or if they're mentally unwell because of the things they then experience, it shows itself as hyper-religiosity. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm interested to see, because I don't know for sure where we're going. I'm starting to see where these threads are connecting, and I'm like, oh, I have a feeling where some of this I have theories about your theory. So.
Well, and I think the other thing with all of this that I'm gonna, like, backtrack a little bit into Tall is that, like, Nort, the zombie, Allie keeps describing, he was touched by God. He's touched by God. They're acknowledging the man in black as God. He was God to them.
Actually, and Sylvia is one of the only ones who doesn't. Sylvia says that he is an angel of God.
Yeah.
And works for God. She seems to be the only one who knows that he's a servant of. Yeah, exactly. She calls herself a bride of God and knows that there's another person involved. But I see what you mean with that. Like, yeah, everybody else is, like, not.
Yeah, they're just, the man in black was God to them. And Sylvia proclaims that Roland is the interloper, which is essentially our devil. And so much of Stephen King's stuff really does go into religion, because, like, mentioning Desperation, and Tall made me think so much of Desperation. A lot of the, like, crux of that plot, and this may be true of every single Stephen King book, so I'm aware. This is my point, actually.
Yeah.
It's how it's like a battle with God, because there's a boy who, like, communes with God and gets, like, their orders for how to deal with the crap in the town that's going on. And the point is also that God can be cruel in his tasks for you, which would explain why some of these people could look at the man in black and go, well, that must be God. He gave us back Nort, but Nort's not quite right, and Nort's not quite happy. And Allie literally does have this just, like, constant taunt of, I can learn everything about death if I just say this one word to him. Yeah. And I have to not say it because I know what it is, and I know that, like, I know I'm going to regret this. Yeah. And it's going to happen. I don't have a choice. I just get to prolong it if I'm lucky. It just does not work out for her because God is not always kind. The reason that stands out is, and it does actually go into a theory that you have mentioned in the past. I think you even mentioned on here, like in our first or second episode, which is about Carrie's father. So I'm probably not going to go super deep into it because we're going to need to come back to this later. Regardless, my point here is mostly that there is, in fact, a theory online that Randall Flagg, the man in black, might be Carrie's father. That he is the one who visited her mother drunk and knocked her up. And that's where Carrie's, like, powers come from. This is a lot more in depth. There's a really great Reddit post about this. The user's name has been deleted, so I don't have a person to cite with this, but the link will be in the episode description. There's also a Screen Rant article that kind of sums up this. The Screen Rant article is only from like last year, whereas the Reddit post is from like 5 years ago.
What if the author of the Screen Rant article is the person who made the Reddit post and they deleted their Reddit because they got hired by Screen Rant?
Hey, maybe. New theory. Regardless.
Theories on theories on theories.
The Screen Rant article mentions Carrie's father's name. And this is what set me down my fucking path this morning, which is her father's name was Ralph White. Annie's ex-husband was Ralph Dugan. And I just out of nowhere decided to look up, what does Dugan as a surname mean? And the start of that "do" means black.
Dugan sounds really familiar too.
Right? And that's the other thing. That's part of why I also looked it up. And I don't feel like these are coincidences. There are a lot of fucking names, but Stephen King keeps using the same ones. There are literally 3 Pauls in Misery. There is a Ralph in Misery. There is a Ralph in Carrie. There are several Eddies. And for sure, one of them is in Misery, and one of the others is referenced almost in Misery, because Paul's mother was friends with a Mrs. Kasprick, which is Eddie Kasprick. And then he writes about Eddie Desmond, and then we know that there will eventually be an Eddie in the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fucking names in the universe. Why did he reuse these names? I don't think it's a coincidence that Ralph was Annie's ex-husband and potentially Carrie's father.
Ralph, I'm almost positive, is one of the names that Flagg uses when he is... If it's not one of the names that he uses, it's somebody that he deals with. But I don't know if you found that in your Charlie dating today.
I tried not to keep letting myself spiral. And I had seen something online that had mentioned something about the possibility of Annie's husband being something. But then people were arguing about like, but then why would he be the one to file for divorce? Because he is the one who divorced Annie.
Because he knew... Sorry, I don't want to step on your toes. It's just that Annie lost her shit about being left and about being abandoned. That would drive her crazy.
Exactly. Which is where I was going.
Oh, sorry.
Was Ralph a pause button? He needed her to keep her crazy enough to get to Paul Sheldon. Because he got her to hold out. Because I actually have it in here, the day that they got divorced. August 23rd, 1980. And he kept her from, like, doing murders for, like, a solid year and a half. Almost 2 years. And if that is what she needed to stagger and not get herself caught so that she could get to Paul Sheldon and he could fall through his holes on his typewriter.
Well, and that's the thing is that the Eyes of the Dragon says that evil very often does things to kind of screw themselves,
yes.
Right? If it was more that it was meant to keep hyping her up, if it was more, because I could see it as if she's starting to settle into a life where she's not doing that, like she's found a career that she does okay at, she's not getting caught, she's not doing bad things, they're only married for like a year and a half and then he abandons her again, somebody else leaves her, it's more meant to drive her up, because I don't know that it would be to send Paul Sheldon down holes. It more feels like Paul Sheldon is what shows up to stop her, because it's meant to get that typewriter. It's Ka's way of getting a gunslinger to her, of getting that typewriter to her to stop what's happening, right? Mm-hmm. Or else she just keeps spinning out and spinning free. That's what I would think. Paul Sheldon is what gets put in her path to end it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise she just keeps going. I think he ends up in that line of, he ends up there more to keep her from ever evening out. Because if she had met somebody else, if she had ended up on meds, if she had ended up just out living in the middle of nowhere where she can't really hurt anybody, and eventually just just kind of sputtering out, but she gets that additional hurt that keeps her going, and now she's looking for people. Now she's got that additional like wound inside of her to keep her like going, because now she's not just thinking about these other like people. Now she's also thinking about, oh, and my husband who also left me. Like, does that seem at all?
It's possible. I think it's hard because like no one really left Annie before her husband.
If the initial, because her family died in a fire, right?
No, she murdered her neighbors in a fire.
Okay.
And then she murdered her father, who looks to the point that Paul notices it uncannily like her father with a mustache. Like the 70s mustache. He says, like, if you shaved it, it would basically look exactly like her dad. Which is also part of why Ralph Dugan does not seem he was just a person.
So what happens to her Like, why doesn't she have...
I think they just gradually die of, like, natural causes and things like that. Like, they're not really mentioned after a certain point. And I don't know if that's intentional or if it was just like, oh, these aren't useful anymore. These characters don't need to be talked about too much. Because she kind of references, like, her mother and the things her mother taught her. But she never really says what happened to her mother.
So I just Googled Flag and Ralph just to see, because I could swear he uses Ralph. I'm wrong. It doesn't look like I can find any others. But there's another Ralph in The Stand.
Yeah, there's too many. No, there are so many names in this world that Stephen King did not choose these names for no reason.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is because he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. And it's making me wonder if that's the thing, is that's not, like, we gotta keep an eye.
We're watching for Ralphs now.
Watch for Ralphs.
Because the thing is that when even Ralph is no longer mentioned after a certain point, and it's very odd for people that would be part of your family to just not talk about them. Because no, I don't know what happened to her mother or to her brother, Paul. I know that she murdered her neighbor, Paul, in the fire. She murders her father on a staircase with laundry. She makes him trip. Also, like, on that note of her father died on July 19th, 1957.
Okay.
So his name was Carl Wilkes. He dies on July 19th, which just, again, we've got 19 coming back. And her husband, Ralph, they get married January 2nd, 1979. And they bought the house on March 18th, which again, 18, she said 9 is a powerful number basically. And when it's doubled, it's lucky. They bought their house on the 18th of March.
Okay.
And they get their divorce on August 23rd of 1980 on the grounds of mental cruelty. That's Ralph's reason. And he's not murdered as far as we can tell. Like, she took no trophies if she did murder him. He basically is no longer mentioned except for one other time. And that is when she's discussing how she's going to dispose of the cop's cruiser, the one that she like kills with the lawnmower. She says that she's going to drive up to a certain place, but her plan to get home, because obviously she's got to take the cruiser, she's got to drive it, is to use Ralph's trail bike. That is like the last time we hear about Ralph anything, is he obviously biked. So from that point on, Ralph is he's gone. And as far as we know, he's living his best life out there, free of Annie Wilkes. It's just very interesting that Dugan begins with, it technically means black in Gaelic, the do part.
Yeah, no, for sure.
My question is, was the man in black Ralph Dugan, and he was some kind of a pause button for Annie's crazy?
Yeah.
Or an exasperator of it? Because if the idea is that some of the things people write become real to the tower.
Yeah.
If they did need to stop Paul Sheldon from writing something specific, would that come into play here? Especially because, like, a pregnancy even, Misery, Paul Sheldon's character, he kills her off through childbirth.
Yeah.
She dies in Misery's baby.
That's what I was just thinking. And if it's not in our world, but if it's in Misery's world, like, if it's the child of Misery, which I cannot help but think that Misery's name and all that has to be.
Yes.
My brain hasn't put together the pieces with that, but that just feels too...
I think it's been the same as, like, the detail that Annie's husband looked like her father. So much so that Paul noted it, that if he just shaved off the mustache, they'd be, like, identical. That is such a weird detail.
Yeah.
Like, we all hear, people go for people like their parents, whatever. But the depths of that, it's just gnawed at me. Like, why did he look like her father? She killed her father, so it's not even like why would she marry a man who looked like her father? This is so fucking weird. What does it mean? What does it mean? So that is the hole that I've gone down, is just looking into Dugan. What does Dugan mean? And now I am just of this position of waiting to find out.
No, that's fair. I think for sure we got to get into more, because, like, small spoiler, the Man in Black, we're about to meet him in the Gunslinger. We're about to talk to him, and then just more shit is going to happen. We're going to meet Jake. Jake is going to be important. The Gunslinger's just going to do some shit, like... there's going to be more just weird sexual shit that he does as well. Like, there's just going to be a lot of... God.
There's just so many things. There's so many things.
I say weird sexual, like, I think it's because I just really have imprinted on my mind, like, the succubus scene that's going to come up. It's not that it's sexy, it's that it's just weird. Everything is just weird.
So weird.
But I think I remember it because there's a picture, like, it's one of the picture scenes.
Yeah.
And it's like him, like, sitting by this, like, stream, looking all like, and then, like, a stream. And I don't know how I didn't understand how emo Roland was.
Right.
Always described as Clint Eastwood, like, I'm pretty sure it was Clint Eastwood. It might be the other one. Oh, John Wayne.
I think it's Clint Eastwood, though.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I think it's Clint Eastwood.
They tend to draw him with the more narrow features.
Yeah, they always draw him like if Stephen King and Clint Eastwood had a baby. And, like, I think that's also a very emo person. So,
and to be clear, when we say emo, we grew up not unfamiliar with these. Like, we say this lovingly and just more of a, like, we see you. I know what you're doing.
I'll be right there with you, Roland. You need to recognize yourself for what you are. You need to, like, just own it and be okay with it, because this shit of, like, no, I'm a stoic, like, I'm so cool and stoic and emotionless. Bullshit.
Also, being emotionless is not cool.
No.
Like, we know that now as adults.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel things, and you should feel things.
Roland definitely needed therapy.
Yes.
But I will say, I'm pretty sure that he got stuck as, like, a 14-year-old boy. And the series does go into that and goes into, like, why. But I just wish that they had recognized that earlier.
It's fair.
But...
So just to top it all off here, shit does eventually hit the fan in Tull. Allie says the word. The town basically goes feral, and Roland starts killing.
It kind of feels like the way they describe it, it kind of feels like he's going, I'm sorry. You guys gotta stop. Come on. Leave me alone, guys. You gotta stop. I can't stop.
Why won't the boss music quit playing? How many more waves can there be?
It does feel like I've watched people play a little bit of the new Resident Evil 4, and, like, one of the very early times when you go into a village and everybody is coming at you and you can't, like, stop shooting. That's kind of what this scene in Tall makes me think of.
Load and shoot, load and shoot. Do not stop loading and shooting. So, with his tale told, Brown asks Roland if he feels better now that he's told it. They have a little back and forth, and eventually Roland moves on, and Brown intends to eat the mule.
I still can't, like... I can't, like... Well, do you want to hear my story? Like, do you want to... Like, don't you want to ask me about it? Do you want to tell me about it? Well, do you want to ask me about it? Like, I don't know who... Stephen King writes for himself.
He does.
He doesn't write, like... Because I don't know who else possibly that was written for. Oh, and there was a whole thing way at the beginning, like way before all this. Back when we were at the apotheosis of deserts. When Roland was thinking about... He's thirsty. But it feels right. You're supposed to be thirsty. He feels good for being thirsty. And I'm only thinking about it because he fills up his water at Brown's and legitimately, like, I don't know if I'm just so used to that whole, like, check your privilege thing. But it's like, dude, people live here. I think that was that feeling of, oh, it's Dune.
Yeah.
Especially with that whole, like, spitting, like, you know, fucking life for your crops or whatever. But he even took a drink out of his water skin to make the spit on the dude's crops. He could have just poured one for your homies out onto the crops.
Right.
He takes a drink, spits on the crops, which feels so much like a Fremen, like...
Yeah.
Like, I'm spitting for your shit. But then he leaves, like, when he's getting ready to, like, and he fills up his water and Brown is like, I'm gonna eat your mule. And it's just so, like, I can't understand if it's that Roland, like, and I should know this. I feel like for everything that I know and for how much I have been immersed in this series, right? Did he learn at Gunslinger school, like, how to be an outdoorsman? Like, and he did. I can tell you, he learned survival shit there. But why, like, I hate everything about him in the desert. And then he just goes back out in the desert. He doesn't ask for any tips from the person living and making crops in the desert. It's another example of what you were talking about, of that whole, like, well, we only see it through Roland's eyes. We only see, like, they only exist for what he needs them for. He doesn't...
The simulation does not exist beyond Roland.
Yeah. He's not a hero.
He's not a hero.
He's kind of a jackass.
I don't even know that he qualifies as anti-hero.
Yeah, I think he's just a dude.
He's just a dude.
He's just a dude doing stuff.
Doing dude stuff.
There's a whole episode of South Park where they just want to go back to playing their video games. And they end up in this scenario where they're like storming a compound with the government. The whole time they're complaining about how much they just want to go back to playing their video games. They're so bored. They're just blank. They're just like, oh, this is lame. I want to go back to playing my Okama game sphere. And that's Roland. He just ends up in these scenarios the whole time where he's doing all this bitchin' shit and he's in this whole, like, he's doing this whole thing and he's like, I just want to go back to my journey for the tower. I don't want any part of this. And he's like, he's learning all these secrets of the universe and traveling dimensions and meeting all these people. And he's like, I just want to go back to what I was doing. Same concept. He's just a dude. Okay, I guess it's time to move on. because I have no attention span left.
Let's determine our fate.
Yeah, it's time for yet another tarot card. Last time we pulled the Knight of Cups, telling us to be in tune with our emotions and listen to our hearts, regardless of logic. Hey, let's go ahead and take a look, and we'll see if we should keep being emotional or go back to
Temperance.
to pure logic. We'll see. Let's take a look. Looks like it's the 10 of Cups.
The 10 of Cups. Which, is that one we've gotten before? This is not.
I don't think
We've
so.
gotten a lot of cup cards, though, which is,
Yeah.
I think, important.
You know what's also interesting is that Roland calls out Cups at one point. In fact, I am open to that page right now.
Okay.
He says to Sylvia Pittston, "Want to bet?" the gunslinger said. He stepped toward her, as the gambler said when he laid down a handful of cups and wands, "Just watch me," from the game Watch Me. So.
Fuck yeah.
And I happened to be on that page.
So, the 10 of Cups resembles contentment with relationships. As the 9 shows individual satisfaction, the 10 shares it with others.
So we're all having a good time.
I hope so.
We're having a good time.
We're having a good time. Yeah.
So I guess if you want to be a troll as well, you can have a good time with us. You can have a good time if you want to take it seriously. Everybody's just having a good time.
That's what we're here for. We're not here for a long time, just a good time.
Speak for yourself. I'm here for both. I want to be 110. I don't. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, we're not here for a long time. Why are you trying to commit to longer?
I want to. My grandparents mostly only lived to like either 50 something or like 80 exactly. So you're the one with the grandparents who all made it to like over 100.
No, only my great-grandmother made it over 100.
Oh, I thought you had more than one that made it over. I guess, yeah, that's fair.
I'm pretty sure she was the only one. I don't know how far over. I don't think she went like wildly over. We're talking like 101, 102, something like that.
As long as I can make it to 69 so that I can spend every day that year being like, nice. I'm good.
Okay, so we are going to be reading Chapter 2, The Way Station, and Chapter 3, The Oracle in the Mountains. Because this is a main Dark Tower book, keep an eye on everything, because you never know when something could end up changing.
And go then, there are other worlds than these.
Follow us on Instagram at ManyConstantWorlds. DM us if you have any thoughts, questions, things you'd like to put out there. You can also email us at manyconstantworlds@gmail.com.